My name is Trebbe Johnson. I live in Ithaca, New York. And my preoccupation for the last many years has been to find practices, very simple practices of giving back to the places on earth that have given a lot to humans and other beings and now have reached a point in their existence where they can't give what they used to give. So for example, forests that have been cut down, rivers that are polluted, trees that are being invaded by invasive species, and street corners on city streets where some kind of act of violence has occurred. So the tendency is to often ignore those places. My passion is to bring people together who love those places and to create simple acts of beauty out of whatever is there. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been a writer longer than I've been doing anything else. I've written a lot on this subject in various ways for magazines, and I've written some books about it. And I just think it's something that's going to be really, really important, increasingly important as we move into a future of really devastating climate change. I'd say two sources of wisdom. I mean, the most obvious source of wisdom ever since I was a little kid has really been the earth itself. And I grew up with an alcoholic father who would be very violent against my mother and against our house when he was drunk. And as in many alcoholic families, there's a lot of denial on the part of the parents, promises that things are going to change. And I, from an early age, realized that they probably were not going to change. And in fact, they were going to be pretty scary and abnormal. So I found refuge in my backyard. I mean, it was just an ordinary suburban backyard in Omaha, Nebraska, but there was so much magic in that backyard for me. And what I learned from the yard was that that all kinds of things exist together: birth and death, and mice with their heads cut off, and flowers blooming, and a puddle that appears overnight with lots of little squirmy things in it. That all things can exist at the same time: beauty and sorrow and grief and joy and revelation. So that was a huge teaching for me, and it's really guided me all my life. And it's directly related to Radical Joy for Hard Times, which I've really only been doing. That's the work I was mentioning a minute ago, Radical Joy for Hard Times. I've only been doing that for about 14 or 15 years. So, and I would say that another source of wisdom for me is just being open to where wisdom arises, because it arises all over the place. And we never know when something is going to strike us and give us exactly the kind of lesson that we need. So I'll give you one little story. I used to live in New York City, and I was on my way somewhere early in the morning at rush hour, and I noticed a man who was probably homeless, kind of wearing tattered clothing, leaning up against a wall, and he kind of slowly sank down the wall. And I noticed this, and probably other people noticed it. But at that moment, a train rushed into the station and everybody shoved on, except this one young woman. You know, she might have been in college. She was that young. She went over to this man and put her hand on his shoulder to see if she could help him. And that touched me so much. Like, I've never forgotten that. Like, there's always something you can do. You can always be the person who reaches out and helps somebody or steps in when other people don't step in. Like, if the world is calling to you, you can step in. And so this anonymous person who I saw for maybe 10 seconds has been a teacher to me for many, many years. So that's what I mean by being open to all kinds of teachings and revelations and epiphanies, because they'll come, and they're far more likely to come if you're open to them. Oh, this is such this question really got me in a thorny place. I mean, I've been thinking about it and thinking about it. And I think I have a great deal of respect for people who deliberately and consciously and specifically work for peace. I always have, ever since I was the Vietnam War, when I was in college, when that was going on and a lot of people were protesting. My own personal vision is more concrete. So I see peace, I see a vision for peace as having to start from something that is not peace, aggression, war, violence, people not getting along. And so with my work with Radical Joy for Hard Times, it starts with acknowledging places that are hurt, like the ones that I mentioned, places that just can't do what they used to be able to do. And so we start with that. We start by acknowledging it, because one of the things that happens with places, which may not happen with people, is that the tendency is to ignore them, to say it's too depressing, I can't face it. Well, a lot of people say that about the news, don't they? They say, I can't watch the news, I've turned it off, it's too depressing. Well, I feel like it's like a sacred duty to know what's going on in the world, because there are a lot of people who are suffering and who need compassion. And there are a lot of places which are not obviously suffering in the same way, but they might need attention. So I see a vision for coming together, whether it's peace in a nation or peace in the world or in a community or in a forest, as a way of it would be having people get together and share a common love. And that's what they do in our practices, which are very, very simple. I mean, we don't certify people, you don't need training. There are 5 suggested simple practices. Really the first and the last are only the important ones, where you go to the place and at the end you make beauty for it. And what very often happens is that people who love a place but don't have very much of anything in common with one another other than that, they get together, they share their love of place, they make beauty for it, they share their stories about what the place means to them, and something transforms. So I would have to say my short answer to this complex question is, what do we share? What do we love? And how can we gather together in a specific locale that we both care about and share our common feelings about it? Well, this is I mean, just this morning I was reading an article about that vision of Earthrise that the astronauts saw when they were first traveling around in space in the Apollo missions in the late 60s and early 70s, where they saw this gorgeous blue and white marble of a planet rising against the dark sky. And people thought that our vision of who we were on the earth would change because of that, that we would realize that we weren't so separate after all, and that we belonged to one planet, and our focus would change. And obviously that hasn't happened. And I think I join many who are despairing now more than ever about what's happening on the earth. But I truly, I have found, and others have found, who meet in places and share what they care about a place, they find something in common that they might not otherwise have known that they do share. It doesn't happen, frankly, it doesn't happen very often with our practices. It happens sometimes. I wish it happened far more often. And I think it's really hard for it to happen in the world. Like in thinking about this question after you sent it to me, I thought a lot about Ukraine. I have friends in Ukraine. And what would it be like for the Russians and the Ukrainians to gather together on the border and like share a simple meal together and talk about the things that they both love? I think it would take a huge amount. It would be massively difficult to get people to agree to that. And yet you hear these stories of like soldiers in World War II from different sides who would pause on Christmas night and sing carols together. So such amazing things do happen. and whether it can happen among humans. See, it's, for me, it's easier to do it on the earth because it's a physical place. I mean, a forest is a physical place. A mountain that top with its top blown off is a physical place. I think it's easier and more concrete to get people to those places and share what they love than to say get the Ukrainians and the Russians on the border to share what they love. It's a great question, and it's a difficult one. Oh, this is another really tricky question, and I've had a lot of trouble with it because to me the concept of peace is really abstract. I mean, I think that you could easily say, well, we're going to be more tolerant to our neighbors. We're not going to write hateful messages on social media. But it's how do we really practice it in real life? What is peace consciousness? So actually, another little story just occurred to me. I live in Ithaca, New York, about, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles outside of the town. And I live in what used to be farmland. I have this little house, and across the street, I have neighbors who are really sloppy. I mean, they litter, they have dogs. They're not your ideal neighbor. And I worried and fretted a lot about them for several months, and wondered what to do. And then it dawned on me to start putting trees and flowers on the edge of my lawn next to the street, so that it would be a beautiful boundary, not like a hostile boundary, like a fence between our two houses. And so I started doing that. I started planting flowering bushes and flowers. And the amazing thing was, while I was out there, the dogs would start barking. And instead of yelling at them or swearing at them, which I was doing in the past, I would greet them and say hello to them. And then they would quit barking. And my attitude towards my neighbors actually changed by making peace, by making beauty on that borderland between our houses. It was really extraordinary. I mean, it's really amazing to me how much my attitude changed. So I think a simple practice like that didn't, there was a part of me that didn't want to do it. I got this idea and I thought, no, I'm not doing that. But I did it anyway, and I'm really glad. Yeah, I think so much about future generations. I have 4 grandchildren, and ranging in age from 4 to 24, and I know a lot of young people. There are young people on our board, and I know how worried they are about the state of the world, about climate change, about getting shot in their classroom, about not finding a job. And I believe that it's so important to find and make as much beauty as you can wherever you are. And that means beautiful gestures like that woman I described in the subway. It means making simple gifts for places like what we do with Radical Joy for Hard Times. We make gifts for the place out of materials that are there on site, you know, whether it's sticks or stones or flowers or branches or even litter, which we then would take out. Just making a simple gift for a hurt place, or reaching beyond that border that's like, I feel that separates me from the rest of the world, and thinking, how can I separate? How can I step beyond this self-defined border? There's a part of all of us, I think, that says, oh, maybe it wouldn't be appropriate, or maybe people would think it was weird, or what business is it of mine? But if we make that gesture to reach out and reach past, and just do the simplest little thing, it doesn't necessarily have to be joining a big organization or giving a lot of money or mobilizing or organizing, just a simple little act of finding and making beauty. It can make a huge, huge difference. And I think it's a lifesaver. You know, it can get us through the hardest times of our lives if we've got that little doorway on the top of our head open, waiting for opportunities to receive and give beauty.